We are going to get started. And for those of you who are members, let's see, well, we have had, believe it or not, 5,611 meetings of the Rotary Club of Chicago since its inception. And we are going to hold today the 5,612th meeting of the Rotary Club of Chicago. So may we hear, since I am in person, I have the honor of getting the meeting started by ringing the bell. All right. Well, we are going to have our guest in person today, who Lisa Russ is going to introduce. As you know, those of you who are in person, after our speaker concludes her remarks, you can ask a question. Either we'll bring a microphone or you can come to the podium so our guest on Zoom can hear the question. And those of you who are on Zoom as well, we'll read your questions. Please write them in the chat box and we'll read them. So Lisa, Lisa is a past president of our club. So she's going to have the honor of introducing Jeanne Long.
Thank you so much, President Marga. Just through the beauty of doing things on Zoom and networking with people, I met Jeanne Long's brother-in-law sometime last year. And, in a lovely gesture, he reached out to me to connect on some other items, and he ended up referring Jeanne to me. And when I learned about Chicago Collections Consortium, I thought this is something that fits into the Rotary Club of Chicago. This is a group of organizations, and Jeannie's going to tell you about this, so I won't take any of her fire. Some really interesting organizations are part of this. 60 members right now, including the Union League Club of Chicago, as well as the Art Institute and many others. Jeanne herself had a 31-year career at the Art Institute, as well as the School of the Art Institute. And so for a person who's connected into the art world, she sure is. And then the last 7 years or so, she's been with Chicago Collections Consortium, which brings together and makes available to our community and outside of it the history of organizations. We were talking at our table, we have Rotary Club of Chicago has gone to a lot of trouble to preserve our archives and make them available for others to review. And that's what Chicago Collections Consortium does. So I'm so excited for Jeanne to join us and tell us about this. It was certainly not on my radar, but Jeanne, come on up and give us some scoop on this fairly new Chicago cultural institution. Thanks, Jeanne.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Marga. Thank you, Lisa, and thank you for this opportunity to share some of the interesting news as to the quick overview of our presentation today. We'll talk about why we became an organization, the need for that, how we've sustained ourselves, how we're growing, and where we're headed to for the future. Next slide, please. So who we are. We were launched in 2012, puts us at the 10-year anniversary this year. Some of the things in that inception, it came under the direction at the time of our co-founders, David Spatafora, who was then the president of the Newberry Library, and Mary Case, who was the Dean of Library Services at the University of Illinois, Chicago. We're working together on a citywide initiative on the subject of mapping. And how can that energy of all the collaborative forces working together? So all that came to be, and with the idea of how can we continue this energy on the subject solely of Chicago history and culture? How can we get those collections in conversation? How can we preserve that? And then most importantly, how can we share that as well? So the building of the organization took place. A lot of brainstorming early on with member organizations. Next slide, please. And things, the foundational steps that came into play were how we would be organized and what would be our governance, the funding source of this, technology options, as we all know, what would be obsolete in a quick, short amount of time. What would our board committee structure look like? And then what would be the bylaws, the legal aspects, the legal status of the operation? Next slide, please. So one step leads to another, and I shared this slide with the idea that it was thoughtful consideration by our founding members and our board with looking at early on in 2017, this collaborative was called the Chicago Library Collaborative. What would be those funding sources that I spoke of? We were incorporated in 2012, putting together a strategic plan, bringing on our portal manager, but it was a layer by layer process for the organization. Next slide, please. So our commitment for Chicago Collection and our, as I mentioned earlier, is really to be that consortium and really that driving force of being able to collaborate, preserve, and share Chicago's history and culture. Next slide. So the shared commitment in terms of saving primary sources, shown here is when in 2012, when the Jane Addams Hull House was coming to a close, where would those materials land? How would they be preserved? How would they be shared? University of Illinois Chicago stepped up and took that on, but that was a concern as we see. Conversations I've had now today with Mercy Hospital shutting their doors, how would their stories be shared? Those stories continue. Next slide. In facilitating scholarship, what could be that one-stop shopping for Chicago history and culture when you're looking for that information? And how can we promote scholarship of recent publications and authors? Next slide. And that collaboration and community is so important to Chicago Collections. How can we support each other? If it's on a different topic, we've partnered with organizations within the city, that from the Chicago Architecture Biennial to just supporting other city-wide initiatives that promote what's the great things that are happening in the city. Next slide. A listing shown here are governing members, larger institutions, and by that I mean larger archival collections, and many are founding members of the organization. Next slide. And this is kind of a kaleidoscope of some of our member organizations, ranging from Chicago Botanic, Pritzker Military Museum, Federal Reserve Bank. So really an exciting source, not only of information, but that opportunity to share knowledge easily. Next slide. And the corporate partners, as Lisa mentioned, which include the Union League Club of Chicago, the Henry Crown Archives, whose archives are fascinating in the sense that capturing the images of the construction of McCormick Place and Lyric Opera House, not McCormick Place, Merchandise Mart, thank you. And also our friends, Chicago Cubs. Next slide. So committees and task force, I said, how can our organization not survive successfully? Because we have access to all the great minds across the city. Our member collection, our member organizations make up our committees and task force by serving on them. Next slide. And our generous supporters. Early on with a grant from the Mellon Foundation, we were able to create our Cornerstone Initiative Explore portal, which I'll share with you, but continued support from organizations like the Gaylord and Dorothy Donnelly Foundation have really been a great source of support for Chicago Collections. Next slide. So our digital identity, Explore Chicago Collections, as mentioned, was that Cornerstone Initiative. How can we bring all these collections together freely, easily, and economically? Next slide. So some of the key objectives, that initial focus, when we talk about that descriptive metadata, that information of the pieces, finding aids about archival collections, expanding that scope to include digital images as well. Next slide. So here's the challenge though. So one of the things with the Explore portal, we wanted to bring these collections, but we didn't want to create more work for our members. We didn't want it to be, I need to input all this material all over, or it has to come in to this source. So great minds got together and digital architects, so to speak, in creating our Explore portal. Next slide. So our target audience are, people like yourself in the room today, researchers, faculty, teachers, students, really the general public at large. Next slide. So we're trying to find the technology options that meet the vision. What would be possible and affordable, sustainable for that matter, categories of content to be managed, and what could members legally participate in terms of their copyright of the materials that they have. These were all part of the consideration. Next slide. So here are the pieces of the portal in terms of the front end interface that users see, and then kind of the back end administrative tool. Next slide. So before Explore, one would have to go to every different website for their information. It isn't, a Google search. You'd have to take time to tap on all our member collections. And now with Explore, we have, next slide, it's really that online portal. It's the gateway to Chicago history and culture. Next slide. So with the Explore portal, you can explore topics just by typing in the search bar, events, movement, buildings, disasters. Next slide. Explore people and organizations. Our next slide. Search the metadata records, diving in a little bit deeper. Next slide. And over 100,000 images. It's fabulous to, on a dark, dreary day, which we've been experiencing quite a few, to really spend some time looking at images of Chicago when the sun was out. Those were captured, but also the changing architecture, if it's Michigan Avenue, all the different developments that have occurred over time, or the construction of those ongoing. Next slide. What has been really helpful for our users is the time that has been taken to really interface with those users in terms of how can we make it that much easier. In the creation of this help guide, which leads users to, okay, I know the Newberry Library, I know Chicago Public Library has this collection that I want to see, but what are their hours? What are their restrictions? Are they open? All this information, especially in the time of the pandemic, was certainly helpful and useful for our users. Next slide. So here's a brief overview of some of the statistics on who's using Explore, with being touched by over 182 countries of users tapping into it. Next slide. So this is near and dear to my heart in terms of our programming outreach. I made mention earlier, those partnerships with organizations that we want to lock arms with just to support each other in our efforts. It doesn't have to be a member organization. How can we collectively work together? Next slide. Initially, early on in our inception in 2015, we hosted kind of our introduction to Chicago with an exhibit entitled Raw Material that brought discoverable treasures from our member collections to the general public. How can you look at archival collections and think of, sources not only for history's sake, but sources of inspiration as well? Next slide. The launch of our inaugural speaker series and partnered with events with the Union League Club and the Newberry and other member organizations really promoted that scholarship of recent publication on Chicago's history and culture. Next slide, please. Here's a fine example last year with the release of the book Modern in the Middle, Chicago Homes from 1929 to 75. We partnered with the authors and then partnered with the American Institute of Architects here in Chicago, really just brainstorming on, all right, that's an audience that would be interested in this topic. How can we support their efforts as well? Next slide. And here's an upcoming event this Thursday at the Newberry Library. We're partnering on a program there as well. Next slide. And then most recently, we launched during the pandemic are Conversations with Chicago Collections, a snapshot, really a half-hour program we just hosted last Friday, spotlighting our member collection from the Chicago Botanic Garden in conversation with Leora Siegel. And just a deep dive into some of the treasures that a user, a member may not be aware of. Next slide. Also, what's important for our member organization are the topic of professional development. Workshops, and that's kind of the brainchild of organizations who are struggling with something, and another organization has found a way. Let's be in conversation. What worked for you? How can we save money that way? But bringing people into the same room and hosting workshops on topics ranging from creating a sense of community through digital futures, and also permissions and rights, topics like that. Next slide. So Ask at Chicago Collections is really a virtual reference desk, free of charge for the general public, where you could type in, my parents used to live on 1312 State Street. I'm looking for that building. What can I find some records on that? And it's manned, next slide, by representatives from different member institutions. So we'll come into our, next slide, come into our portal, and topics will be addressed by one of our member institutions. So Reference Referral Network will address topics that range anything from a collection specific type, genealogy, digital image use, donations, and appraisal. Next slide. So here's an example of some of the questions that have come in. How can I find information on a building my grandfather owned in the 1940s on Halstead Street? It was a grocery store, etc. And then it dives in, it shows examples of like 2 paths to investigate that the researcher, the general public may not have thought to take in finding their information. Next slide. So here's one of an intern who's for a documentary film production company in Boston, working on a film, looking for photographs. And then, you know, the answer quick and easily is provided by the Chicago History Museum, and sharing that information on the vertical master file of photographs that they have in their collection. Next slide. So on the topic subject guides, again, making it on kind of popular topics on Chicago, have been created for our users, and really pulling together information quickly, easily, and efficiently. So in addition to music, next slide, the topic of politics, which there's a lot to be found there. Next slide. And on neighborhoods. Next slide. So the quote by Melanie Newport really kind of captures the use of Explore Chicago Collections, in this idea where she states, it is the best gateway to urban history of any city in America, period. And I think that's the question that I find when we go to conferences and things like, what's your recipe for the organization? How can you get all these member collections working together? And it's through the leadership of our board, the leadership of our committees, but the careful consideration that that history needs to be preserved, making it that much better for the future. If we can't learn from what has come behind us, let's move, going forward in a positive way. Next slide. So one of the interesting things we've been done, and during the pandemic, we had shared, Chicago Collections was built for the pandemic with our online community environment, was this idea of being able to share collections and having collections be in conversations with each other. The beauty of a digital exhibit is there's no shelf life. It's always freely open, accessible. Shown here are 2 examples of exhibits that Chicago Collection has done. Next slide. And then most recently, Chicago Collections hosted on our website now a digital exhibit entitled A Glimpse Back at Chicago's Communities and Neighborhoods. So you have a variety of collections and conversations, and I invite you later on today to jump on our website to take a look at some of the collections come alive. You'll hear Barbara Streisand talking about Mr. Kelly, a wide range of information. Next slide. And then public awareness, and that's why I'm so thankful for the opportunity today to really, my mantra is no sense doing all this great stuff if nobody knows about us. So having the opportunity to share the information with all of you today is very important. But obviously we're at different professional settings and conferences as well that I spoke of. Next slide. One of the things that was early on in terms of our strategic member growth, we just didn't want to grab collections for collection's sake or more members for numbers. It's what are the pieces of Chicago's puzzle in terms of our history that we're missing? And a lot of, as we know with organizations, there could be several organizations on a specific topic. In the case of Pullman National Monument and Historic Pullman Foundation, they could join because they're collections on a similar topic collectively together. Our partnership with the Chicago Cultural Alliance, next slide, speaks to bringing on cultural organizations who many are run by volunteers and bringing on their collections, which by having them access on our Explore portal, puts them in light on a marketing front to a bigger community, but also puts those collections, what I was speaking to earlier, in conversation with other member organizations on specific topics, from participating in digital exhibits, but just for that researcher can dive in and said, you know what, I didn't know that the Hellenic National Museum had this, maybe I'll go visit, etc. So we continue that partnership and bring on other member organizations as well. Next slide. So Chicago Collections Factors for Success, we have that shared vision collectively. I guess this would be our version of of a recipe, but that trust in building and existing relationships, the leadership commitment that I spoke of earlier, but the sustainability, we don't grow for the sake of growing, and our respect for our member institutions' policies as well. Next slide. So outcomes for public cultural heritage, looking at those connections, access, and preservation, leveraging that print and digital, but also the collaboration is the only way. We're only going to get stronger, and having that opportunity to share your information and frankly market it as well. Next slide. So what does the future look like for Chicago Collections? I mean, we've been in conversation with the idea of could it possibly be a regional storage facility for our members? What about shared web access, perhaps publishing? Again, back to that sharing information of this model for our city and what's worked for us. Next slide. I've outlined some of our goals, and as we look to 2023, those goals, we will adhere to enhancing public access. We will continue to foster and engage community, continue to build that strong involved membership, and continue to sustain that effective organizational structure. Next slide. So we're 10 years and counting, which again, in comparison to the Rotary Club, we're just a baby, but we do look at that first decade as very important time frame for us. And we do want to continue these and support civic engagements and partnerships, as well as continue to expand our membership as well. Next slide. So as mentioned, we're celebrating the 10 years, but what else is in store for us? I don't know where you were on March 3rd, but you were experiencing Chicago Collections Day wherever you were, so we were quite proud of that. But we have other events that are listed on our website that we invite you to take a peek at as well. Next slide. And here are our social media handles that we invite you to follow. And then I'll open it up. Next slide. For any questions? Yes.
This is a great collection of things. Thank you for bringing this up. I have a question
Do you have you involved any food institutions in your scenario? We have Chicago is a great food town. We have 26, 27 Michelin places, I think, at least 1 to 3 stars, and also many recommended. And do you plan to include food as a part of your program?
That's a great question. Our membership criteria, we have non-for-profits and then for-profits. And on that topic too of just historical guide of menus as well in terms of what exists as it relates to menus. But that's an area that we haven't tapped into yet. And I say yet because we've got a lot of pieces of the puzzle that we're still working on. But no, thank you for mentioning that.
So what is Chicago, the Chicago region encompass? How big is your catchment group?
Right now, our members, we have Northern Illinois University as a member. So really outlying region of Chicago in that sense. We go far north, but also members can come on board with the idea that if their collection contains pertinent material to Chicago as well, but we like that active participation of our members as outlined on committees. So it's pretty broad based in terms of, a range, what we consider Chicagoland. One of the things we recently did with in the Chicagoland was hosting a high school competition for poetry on the subject of have a student go on into the Explore portal and dive in and what would they be inspired about in Chicago history that they could write a poem about. So getting faculty, instructors, teachers used to using Explore, but also getting the students to look at archives in history as a source of inspiration for. So we had students really quite a broad range. So.
Thank you so much. This was delightful and very informative. I'm very excited. And one thing came in mind. Have you ever heard of the app called Here? It's co-founded by Kevin Costner, and it's overlapped with the maps and GPS. And wherever you're traveling, they highlighting some locations, some history, so you could tap on it and it brings up the article, the pictures, and his voice reads for you if you ought to choose to go that route. And I thought of it, if we could merge or at least have a partner, he would bring the digital platform on his or in collaboration. So when someone travels streets of Chicago or all of that could be brought up, and just with the click on the map, and all the pictures pop up about that particular location. So just a suggestion, something that came to mind.
And actually, no, I'm glad that you mentioned that. We facilitated something like that with our digital exhibit on Chicago protests, spanning like 150 years of protests across the city. So it's basically a walking tour using the platform that you could tap into that would automatically provide that history as well. So yeah, it's a unique feature, that should be utilized even more, making it that much easier for the user. And as I said in my invitation to jumping onto our website, you'll find the ease, and it was designed and structured in a way that just makes you want to click a little bit more.
Yes, well, my question is health included as a topic? Because we have many research institutions here, as well as hospitals, and also nonprofits that are working on health, among them Rotary International and Rotary clubs.
Absolutely. Northwestern Archives, Rush University Medical Center archives are part of Chicago Collections, as well as on the topic of health, within our other organizations too. So that does exist. Yes.
Jeannie, so any of us can just go on the website and search around and come up with all this incredible stuff. So is there anything else that we need to do as, users of Explore and some of your other tools?
No, I really hope you will jump into the website and also take some time to look at the digital exhibits. We, like all of you that are joining us via Zoom today, as I said, when the pandemic hit, I told our board we were built for the pandemic, and this idea that hosting our programs virtually, and all our services are free and open access. That was the main criteria, how to get it in the hands of, the young minds, the general public, the researchers. So
do you have any materials or programs for educators? I taught grade school at Sacred Heart Schools for 30 years, and fourth graders have to study a whole unit on Chicago. So thinking of a 10-year-old
right.
doing research for a project, and do you have any
Everyone's going to
materials
think
for educators?
that I planted you in the audience today, because that was, again, getting it into the hands. We partner with Chicago History Fair and have been for some time. But one of the new initiatives that we've been doing is creating a teacher resource guide on the subject of our digital exhibits. So it dives in a little bit deeper on various topics, and it's that clean. You would think I was giving out the most expensive gifts when I went to the history fair with the teachers, finally in person, and handing them these curriculum guides. So the short answer is yes, and having that access for teachers to, dive in a little bit deeper and curriculums. And we'll be releasing one on the stories of immigration and migration to Chicago as well.
Thank you.
Well, Jeanne,
Thank you
so much. This is fascinating because, I'm a fairly new resident in the Chicago area compared to everybody that is in this room. So what a source of information. So, well, thank you for joining us. Lisa, thank you for bringing Jeanne to our club. And we would like to extend you a certificate of recognition and a gratitude that, it's going to be sent to you by email. In person. Okay, so Tamara has it for you. So thank you, really. And also what I would like to say, I before the meeting started, I was telling Jeanne about the Paul Harris home. And of course, we have Marshall, who is right there, very involved, as well as members of our club formed the Paul Harris Home Foundation. So we renovated the home in honor to the founder, right? But then our history in Chicago is, 117 years old. And from here, from this city and from this state, many important things have happened, such as the launching of an effort to eradicate polio from the face of the earth. So, Rotary, it was a group of 5 Rotarians who said, how about if we do that? And now that effort has extended not only all over the Rotarian world, but as well partner with other organizations such as UNICEF, CDC, Bill the Gates Foundation and Rotary International. So, in the last, this started, I think, in 1985. When we had 300,000 cases of polio every year. And now in the last 15 months, we've had 1 case of polio in Pakistan. So, but this effort, it was launched by a group of people who are members of our organization. So that's why I was asking about health. And maybe there is a little corner in this amazing collection that, I don't know, I'm not asking, right? But what I volunteer is to have Jeanne meet Cheryl McIntyre, who's a chair of our Paul Harrison Foundation. And maybe, Marshall, you'll have a lot of things to tell Jeanne about the house and what it means to all of us and what it means to the community where the house is. So we love history and we're thankful. And I hope that we can be in touch. Yes.
I hope so too. And we would welcome the opportunity to share the very rich and
history of the Rotary organization with our users, and also that history that intersects with other organizations as well, and on various topics that people don't even know that the huge commitment that the Rotary has made to not only the founding club here, but that rich history too. So
Yes.
thank you very much.
Thank you. And but we will be in touch. So thank you. All right. So we're going to continue now with our program. And I would like to, let's see, who are the guests that we have here at the club. And Ginta, you brought Andras, who, would you like Andras to say a couple of words to us?
It's really an honor to be here. I'm very sorry that this stay seems to be very short. I'm unfortunately leaving Windy City tomorrow for good after spending here 6 years and 9 months of absolutely great time. I was flattered to have this opportunity prior to my retirement, which will happen next week. Returning to my new 4 grandchildren, of whom I haven't met one yet. So, he was born in April. I will always feel as a real Chicagoan. The absolutely best thing is I will inframe my 4 membership cards of urban kayaking. I spent 4 years on Chicago River in a kayak and on a paddleboard in Monroe Harbor. So absolutely great. So, sorry? Oh yes, I was the. By the way, I also was the trade commissioner of Hungary here. We have a consulate general in Chicago responsible for 11 states of what we perceive as Midwest, and I was responsible for promoting the trade contacts between this region and Hungary. We have 85 Midwest companies represented in Hungary. That's absolutely great. We also have vivid trade relations, which I tried to promote as much as I could. And it was absolutely great to be part of this vivid and flourishing business and cultural and human life, which I experienced throughout my stay here. And many thanks for that. And it was absolutely great. And many thanks for Hinta for inviting me to this event. So. Thank you very much, and congratulations for your work as in making these great collections better known to the whole general public. Thank you very much.
Well, Andras, I have good news for you because you may be able to have more time when you go back to Budapest. There is Rotary in Budapest, and in fact, one of our club members was, for a time, not only he lived in Budapest as an attorney for Baker & McKenzie, but he was the honorary consul of Hungary here in Illinois. Maybe you know him, Robert Knupfer? You know him, right?
I know him, and he was absolutely instrumental in helping me and us in the reopening of our Consulate General. So Rob is absolutely great, and I will always feel grateful to him. So,
well, that's what.
It's really proud to know that he founded Baker & McKenzie's office and big organization in Budapest.
Yeah.
Also Rotary as well.
That's right. That's right.
He's,
well, stay connected with us. So
I will.
It's a delight to have you with us. Thank you. Okay, we also have on Zoom Ellen Keith, who is the board chair of the CCC. Helen, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you so much. It's so wonderful to be able to attend by Zoom. I'm the board chair of the Chicago Collections Consortium and work very closely with Jeanne, who has been just the most amazing executive director any organization could ask for, and has just kept us going these last couple years in the pandemic. And of course, prior to that, I am the director of research and access at the Chicago History Museum. And I will tell you that I also work at our reference desk, and the Explore Chicago Collections portal is just a lifesaver for any librarian who works with Chicago history in terms of, figuring out what our colleagues at other institutions have. So I love hearing Jeanne talk about Chicago collections, and this is a wonderful program, and I'm glad I could attend.
Thank you so much for being here with us. Do we have any other guests here present at the room? I think we're all familiar faces, so it's great to see you again. So now I would like to invite Lisa to come back to the podium to tell us about an upcoming event, Woman of the Year.
Okay.
Yes, it's coming again. Here we go. This is in really a month from today, everybody. And so Tamara tells me that by tomorrow, everybody will have our electronic invite so that you can not only make a note of it and come yourself, but please invite people. As you can see, we have some pretty cool women. We met actually Kelly Fair about a month ago, who's with Polished Pebbles. Works with young girls in Chicago to give them all kinds of support. And what a neat young lady she is, thanks to Alita. She is going to be one of our honorees. Dolores Jordan, we know who she is. She's Michael Jordan's mother. And I don't know if Michael Jordan is going to make it next month or not. But I think she is, or he is, excuse me. This lady is a powerhouse, and this is actually going to be right before she retires from a long-standing role of all the things that not only the Michael Jordan Foundation, but this particular organization, James R. Jordan, which is her husband, that all the work that she has done with children and families in the city of Chicago. And then thanks to Evan Freund. Evan is a longstanding member of our club who has moved to California in the last couple of months. And Evan has been involved in a group of Rotarians and non-Rotarians who have been working for improvements in our justice system. All kinds of ways. It's been I am privy to some of Evan's emails and updates. And Evan brought forth this young lady, Jennifer Sobel, who is with this cool organization called the Illinois Prison Project. And so some diverse stuff here, and it's going to be a neat day. And thank you so much for all who have, supported us in the past. And really what we just need from both our female and our male members is just invite people. We hope we're going to have another great day. That's a month from today. Thanks, Marga.
Well, Lisa, congratulations to you, because you brought this idea to the club, and this is the 9th year, right, that we're holding this celebration. So bring your friends. We have had the room on the 5th floor of the Union League Club completely packed. So let's make it again another wonderful event, right? All right, now for our announcements, we have, as you know, the Job One program. And for those who are listening on Facebook or on Zoom, this is a program, a signature program of our club. We train juniors and senior high school students that are residents of Chicago, and they attend schools in Chicago. We prepare them for the first real job, quote unquote, that they're going to have, which is a summer internship, either at a business or corporate organization or a nonprofit. So these kids, selected and very talented and really great candidates, can have their first real paid job before they go to school or they continue to their senior year of high school. So if you know organizations that would like to hire an intern, please contact Alita or contact Tamara at the office. Alita is not here with us today, but she is the head of this program. As we know, job one. So we're counting with you if you could help us, because we have wonderful students and we need a few more employers to have them for the summer. All right. So the next thing that I can share with you is that the Rotary Club of Little Village is organizing a 5K run for peace on May 21st, 2022 in La Villita Park in Chicago. So the weather is going to be wonderful. I hope it is above 40 degrees at least. If it is too cold, you can run, okay, or you can walk, but it would be nice to go and support the Little Village Club. All right. And then what else we have here today? Oh, what here I'm reading, friends. So the proceeds of this race go to youth programs promoting peace in the Little Village. Okay, so the new upcoming meetings that we have, our committees continue to meet virtually. It is something that we have really enjoyed doing, and they have been very productive. So look at the calendar, at the Gyret magazine as well on the screen. So International Service Committee meets on Wednesday, May the 4th at 5:30 p.m. And Betsy and Shada are the co-chairs at the Community Service Committee. Sarah is the co-chair, and Wes, who is not here in person today. They are also, if you have any questions about the CSC, Sarah is here, so feel free to ask her. PR and Marketing also is meeting on May 19th at 4 p.m. and the Membership Committee on Friday, May 20th at 8 a.m. So any Rotarian can join any committee, and, we will be happy to have you. All right. And then what else? Our upcoming meetings on May 3rd, at 5:30 p.m. As you know, the first Tuesday of every month, we meet in the evening, and it's a social event, and we usually have a speaker, and it is going to take place at the Bronzeville YMCA, and we're going to have a tour, and somebody is going to tell us a story of that YMCA. This is a meeting that will hold only in person, so you don't want to miss this, okay? May 10th, at our lunchtime, we are having as our guest speaker, former Governor Jim Edgar. This is going to be Governor of Illinois, and this is going to be a hybrid meeting. So again, this is going to be a really fun opportunity to hear what the governor has to say, as well as another opportunity for you to invite your friends. We are co-hosting this event with a Union League club, so many of the members of the club are going to attend, as well our Rotary members. All right, and on May 17th, we have Rick Yoder and Chris Russell, that they created an organization called Destiny Rescue. This event is going to be just virtual. All right. And I tell you what Destiny Rescue is about. It is a nonprofit organization, faith-based, that focuses on rescuing underage girls from sex trafficking. And Rick Yoder started this organization. And in one of these talks, Chris Russell was present, and he was heartbroken by what he heard. He was a middle school principal, and then he started talking with Rick. And anyway, to make the story short, they became partners in this organization. And this is something you really, we should all be present and listen, because unfortunately Chicago is one of the, competes for the 4th or 5th worst city in the United States in what respects sex trafficking, and human trafficking. So with that, this is all what I have to tell you for today. And I look forward to seeing you next week. And then we close the meeting by reciting the 4-way test, which, Jeannie, it is the things we think, say, and do. And I would invite you to all stand up and recite it together. And we have the 4-way test in these panels. So number one, is it the truth? Number two, is it fair to all concerned? Number three, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And number four, will it be beneficial to all concerned? All right, so with that, the meeting is closed. Thank you.